Hey guys, Jesse Lavelle, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing the hidden cost associated with purchasing the Canon EOS R6. Now, if you're thinking about purchasing a Canon R6, you're probably thinking to yourself, what is he talking about? Hidden cost associated with picking up a Canon R6? What kind of hidden cost could there be? And what I'm talking about is the computer that you're going to need to deal with the footage or deal with the pictures that you're going to get off from these cameras. One thing that people really do want to be aware of is the fact that it records an IPB compression as opposed to all-I. Now, it's preferred to be using all-I, but unfortunately they only gave us IPB. Now, when the camera initially came out, it was only IPB that could be recorded in, and then they ended up putting out an IPB Lite because people were having so much trouble with trying to edit the footage. And that's the problem with IPB compression, is the fact that it's so compressed, it's really hard on the processor in your computer. And there's really only a couple of processors that are out right now that are able to handle IPB footage coming off from the R6 or even the R5. And what that basically means is when you go into your video editor and you try to scrub through the footage, it's not going to be able to fluently scrub through it. It's going to be really hitchy, really choppy, and it's not going to be fun to edit with it at all. And that's the really big problem, is that a lot of people get these cameras and then they don't realize that off the bat, and then they go and they throw the footage onto their computer, and all of a sudden they realize their computer is not going to be up to par for processing the type of footage that they're going to get from this camera. Then all of a sudden you're looking at buying another $1,000, $2,000 computer, and that's where the hidden cost is associated with these cameras that I'm talking about. So if you're like me and you plan on doing a lot of video work, you want to understand what type of computer you're going to need to process this footage and not have a really horrible time doing it. Now, there's a couple of processors that have come out since the R6 came out that do handle the footage quite well. When I got my new MacBook Pro that you see behind me, that's using the M1 Pro processor. Now, any of the M1 architecture processors are able to handle the footage, and that's because they've got something called hardware acceleration, specifically for H.265 files, what the R6 records in. So that's one thing that you can know, is that if you're able to pick up one of the new M1 processors or one of the newer ones like the M1 Pro or M1 Max, that's going to handle your footage fine. But again, very pricey. When it goes to Windows computers and you're looking at something running on Intel processors or Ryzen processors, there's really only one processor that can handle this type of footage right now, and that's the Alder Lake processors. Now, I haven't personally used them in real life, so I can't personally say that they work well, but I have seen a lot of reports that, it outperforms the M1 processors. It's supposed to handle editing the H.265 files that are recorded in IPB compression with the R6 fine, so I'm sure they do. I just personally haven't used them. So that's something that you do really want to be aware of when you start thinking about picking up an R6 though, especially if you're interested in video footage with it. Or if you want to be like me and you want to take the dive and switch over to Apple, because I've always been a Windows user my entire life, and I ended up switching over to the MacBook Pro. I got the 2021 version of the MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro chip, 16 gigs of RAM. Handles everything fine in Premiere Pro for me. I'm talking multiple layers of 4K. You can do graphic templates and all kinds of things in Premiere Pro. I'm not going to have any issue with the M1 Pro chip. The M1 Pro chip is an absolute beast. And again, if you're a Windows user, which I always was, then you can look into upgrading to one of the Alder Lake chips, and that should take care of you as well. But it is something that you definitely want to be aware of if you're considering purchasing an R6. You don't want to go ahead and pick up the camera and then be really disappointed in your computer when you realize you can't really deal with any of the footage that's coming off from your camera. So guys, I hope this helped you out a little bit. If it did, go below, subscribe, click the notification bell, and I'll see you on my next video.